30% of our community. And so this kind of double dynamic is the first pastoral challenge that arises out of where we fit in the American religious landscape. We are, however, not simply a community. We are a church that is institutional by nature and by instinct. We have been builders from the time of the Roman Empire until today. And in the United States, the institutional instinct of Catholicism reached its most developed form. So if you look at us today, in the first decade of the 21st century, we are a single religious community with roughly 18,000 parishes in the country. Secondly, we in some form support the largest private school system in the United States. Catholic Charities is the largest single social network of social service to the widows, orphans, and resident aliens. The largest single social service network short of the federal and state government. And the Catholic health system is 10% of the American health system. It holds its own in a highly dynamic market with great complexity, and it does so with a distinctive moral vision. So, parishes, schools, social service, healthcare, and then of course Catholic higher education, unlike anything else in the world. 228 colleges and universities of various kinds spread across this country. When you move from our numbers and our institutions to location, the location is fascinating. Usually when they write the history of American Catholicism, they talk about us as an immigrant church and then a post-immigrant church. And the dividing line is usually roughly the middle of the 20th century, and oftentimes specified with the election of John Kennedy, saying Catholics arrived, if you will. But the interesting thing is, of course, that survey, immigrant church, now post-immigrant church, just doesn't work as a total explanation. It is true, we are now, as Catholics, you represented, we are at the center of American society. No matter what major institution of this country you want to look at, from the U.S. Congress to any of the major professions, law, medicine, etc., to education and the corporate world, Catholics are no longer on the edge. They're at the center. But we're at the center and we're back out at the edge. We are now newly immigrant. Post-immigrant at the center, newly immigrant at the edge. And so when you look at where we fit, and when you look at this web of institutions that we have built, when this country debates its most urgent questions, we are already right in the middle of it. Because surely the most urgent questions we have is how we educate the young, care for the sick, support families, sustain communities. With 18,000 parishes, schools, hospitals, and social service agencies, with people at the center of American society, connected by faith to people at the edge of American society, we are located in a strategically unique place. Because people at the center often don't know anyone at the edge. And people at the edge don't know many people at the center. As a faith community, we bridge that gap. And we do it at a time of significant growing inequality in American society, which adds to the challenge of the widows, the orphans, and the resident aliens. Finally, politically, we are a classical swing vote in the country. We have become that in recent years. I remember being on a panel at Harvard, not this election year, but the previous election, and the panel was only 2 weeks before the election. And so the purpose of the panel was to look at religion and politics and look at how the religious community was breaking down. And so the pollster said 90% of Protestant evangelicals will vote for President Bush. Mainline Protestants will tend to be Democrats, but they're a declining number. The Jewish community is solidly Democratic. And then she said, and the swing voter in the United States today is a 51-year-old white Catholic woman living in Michigan. That's the swing vote in the election. It gets that specific. Why are we in that position? I think partly we're in that position because of our numbers. We are a large community. I think partly we're in that position because we live heavily in swing states. That's why you hear about us all the time. Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, California. And thirdly, we're in that position, I think, partly because of our social vision. We're swing voters because we have a range of issues that is not replicated by any single political party. For me, 22 years in Washington convinced me of a truth that Catholics have a lot of friends and no stable allies. If you go to Capitol Hill and talk about right to life and abortion and assisted suicide, you will get one group of elected officials come and hear you. If you go to Capitol Hill and talk about immigration, minimum wage, and arms control, you get another group. You seldom get the two groups together in any one room. We have a lot of friends, no permanent allies. On the whole, I tend to think that's a good idea. I don't think the church ought to be in the pocket of any political party. We ought to be in constant contact with them both and with others. Moving beyond where we fit, what's the character of the society that we work with, and how does this, in a sense, challenge us? Well, there are different ways to try to sketch the character of American society, and so I am obviously being selective. But what I'm trying to do is to lift out characteristics that kind of pose a challenge and a possibility for things that we hold in our religious moral vision. So I would want to argue that American society has the following characteristics that are important to us. We live with a secular state, in a pluralistic society, in a capitalist economy, and in a global power. We are that every day of the week. We are many other things beside, but those are major characteristics that mark American society. And interestingly enough, each one of them poses its own kind of question for the Catholic social vision. So we live with a secular state. That's what we mean when we talk about the separation of church and state. Actually, of course, as you know, the term separation never appears in the American Constitution. But it means something when we say we believe in the separation of church and state. There are many ways to explain that phrase, but I think politically it is simple to grasp the central idea that is represented by the separation of church and state. What it means is that religious groups in American society should expect neither favoritism nor any special discrimination because they are religious. A secular state means we get no special help from the state in doing what we deeply believe in, and we should experience no special discrimination in seeking